the MVP front runner. If anybody else got to say something different about that, then come see me. I'm right here in B-More outside the bank. If you got an issue with that, come see me. I'm about that. Big trust. Whoop, whoop. Lamar Jackson in the flesh. Yes, sir. Big.
Put your hands up, come on, put your hands up, are you ready?
Welcome everyone to a new episode of Time to Football. I'm your host, the top button wearing Hassan Khan, and in this video, we're going to be talking fantasy football. So believe it or not, this isn't a fantasy football channel. I just come out with one video a week regarding fantasy football. That's the starts and sits. I don't consider myself to be a fantasy football expert. That's like an Instagram model saying that they're an influencer. Like, what the hell is that? You take a picture of your butt and you think you're changing lives? The only people you influence are guys to look up your picks. Anyways, we're gonna talk about fantasy football just for this week because a lot of the audience has come from those fantasy football starts and sits videos, and I thought it'd be a neat idea to talk about some streamers to look into going into the fantasy football playoffs. Before we get into all that, we're gonna tell you about Overlay DFS. This is daily fantasy football and it's lots of fun, where the matchups are pretty much just start or sit. You just guess which one is gonna have more fantasy points for that week. In one of the main lobbies, some of the matchups for this week include Drew Brees versus Russell Wilson, Saquon Barkley versus Julio Jones, John Brown versus Courtland Sutton, and so many more. Right now, there are a couple jackpots of $2,700 and even one over $25,000. That's a lot of money. To sign up and start playing, download the app for iOS or click the link in the description. Go to www.overlaydfs.com. Hungriest player of the week, the one that wanted it the most. Punters are people too. Unless you're Patriots punter Jake Bailey, then you're a machine. In that game against the Philadelphia Eagles, he had 8 punts and 6 of them landed inside of the 20-yard line. But the most important and crucial punt was the very last punt. Up 17-10, with about 42 seconds left in the game, Bailey pinned the Eagles deep at the 12-yard line, so the Eagles had to go 88 yards to score a touchdown to tie the game. They couldn't do it, and all of that is accredited to Jake Bailey. And that is why he is the hungriest player of the week. Now we're going to talk about the fantasy football playoffs and players that you should stream in the postseason. This is the general sense that most fantasy football leagues are in weeks 14, 15, and 16. Those are the playoffs for most leagues. These are players that you wouldn't start every week, that are either on your bench, on the waivers, or some players that you could possibly trade for going into the playoffs. Let's jump right into it with week 14, the start of the fantasy football playoffs. We're going to read it off like it's a fantasy football roster. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, every position. So with quarterbacks, week 14, Daniel Jones is a very good streamer. Keep in mind that he's a good streamer for the rest of the fantasy football playoffs. Then you got running backs Miles Sanders, Darius Geis, have some good matchups. Golden Tate is someone that might be a wide receiver too, whether it's on your team or on someone else's team, and they may not be a streamer, they might be a start every single week, but it is someone that you could possibly trade for if you're in need of a wide receiver going into the postseason. Jameson Crowder has been on fire, Sam Darnold's favorite target. Tight end, Vance McDonald. Basically, Arizona is horrendous against tight ends. Flex spot, Kareem Hunt. Very underrated. They seem to be giving him some work alongside Nick Chubb. Defense and special teams, the Browns are someone to look forward to starting in week 14. And then the kicker position, we got Kaimi Fairbairn versus Denver. Week 15, a familiar name. Daniel Jones again versus Miami. Kareem Hunt, another familiar name versus Arizona. Running back, Ronald Jones versus Detroit. Then you got your wide receivers. Deebo Samuel has really stepped it up with George Kittle being hurt. Maybe with Kittle returning, that might lower his value. That's something to watch out for going for the rest of the season. Then we got Terry McLaurin versus Philadelphia. Gerald Everett has been very disappointing since his whole emergence as one of Jared Goff's favorite targets, but he has a good matchup against Dallas. Marvin Jones doesn't seem to be losing any projection with Jeff Driscoll in at quarterback and Matthew Stafford being hurt. Then you got defense and special teams, the Packers versus the Bears. They are very good defense to look out for in the fantasy playoffs. And then kickers, you got Matt Prater versus Tampa Bay. Then in week 16, for the third straight week, Daniel Jones versus Washington. This is possibly telling you something. Start Daniel Jones. Running back James White versus Buffalo. Darius Geis again for the second time he has a good matchup against New York. Then wide receiver Devontae Parker, very underrated, under the radar. You may want to think about trading for him. Odds are that he's already been picked up off the waiver wire, but if it's a possibility, you could trade something low for him, grab him if you need some help in Week 16. DK Metcalf versus Arizona, Jacob Hollister versus Arizona as well. So Arizona, like we said, terrible against tight ends, and with Hollister being force-fed a lot of the targets from Russell Wilson, he is a very good play. Flex, Jonathan Williams versus Carolina. This is assuming that Williams is going to be taking over the lead back role, and it's not going to be a running back by committee approach for Indianapolis. Carolina has been pretty bad against running backs as of late. The Colts versus Carolina, I don't know what's going on with the Panthers offense, but they seem to be on a decline. The Colts are a very good start. Matt Prater versus Denver, and Denver historically has been doing pretty bad against kickers, so Matt Prater for the second time is on this list for Weeks 15 and Week 16. We're going to name some other players that we haven't listed so far. These are players that may be on your bench, on the waivers. You could trade for some of these players, given that a lot of them are injured. Carson Wentz. Listen, he hasn't been doing well. Hopefully this week against the Seattle Seahawks, this will be a turnaround. The Seahawks have been very bad against quarterbacks, so this might be a turnaround. You may want to grab him as soon as you can. He has a couple good matchups in the playoffs. Jordan Howard, also Eagles, have some good matchups in the playoffs. He's been hurt. Grab him as soon as you can. He's been getting 19 carries a game in the last 2 weeks that he was playing, so make sure you guys can go ahead and grab him. Adam Thielen, someone that's been forgotten about. Since Week 7, he's been hurt. He's on a bye week right now. This might be a good opportunity to trade for him, for someone that is in need of a wide receiver or a running back. This is a must-win game for them, so that's something that you could take advantage of. Trade them a player so you can go ahead and grab Adam Thielen, and it won't hurt either person. And then the Giants defense, they've been up and down all season, mostly down, but in the playoffs, these teams that they face, Washington, Miami, these are teams that you may want to think about streaming the New York Giants. So these are some players to look out for going into the fantasy football playoffs. But I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think? Do you feel like that there are other players that we should consider for the postseason? Leave a comment down below and let us know your thoughts. Name those players. Let's try to help each other out in winning a fantasy football championship. Also subscribe to this channel so you can stay up to date when we come out with a new episode every single week. And be sure to hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. The username for all three is @TimeToFootball. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next week.